Hello, I'm Ken. Welcome. We're visiting with Mike. Mike, we've talked about lots of different kinds of organizations. We've talked about ideas and tools for creating helpful change. Do you have more examples you'd like to give us?
Well, the one that I in the Bible in Exodus, when Moses took the people out of Egypt, it's an interesting case study because you know God is the designer, people are the implementers. So it's interesting to see what were the building blocks that were being used to to get a group of people who are essentially slave and have been away from, or I've been there for what, 400 years or something like that. And it really, I would assume after 400 years, when you put people in a foreign environment, you pretty well become incorporated into a culture. So how do you take people out of one culture and really build another culture that's dramatically different? And the first thing we talked about was the path that was taken to take them from Egypt. And the shortcut would have been 3 days. And the long story is that it took 40 years to get there. So a little bit difference in time. And the 40 years didn't have to be, except that the people, the original people, were reluctant to go in and possess the land. So God said, "Fine, you don't want to go. Your descendants will go, not you." So took 40 years for the people to fade away.
Can
So
I
it's
break in right here? Do you
sure,
mind?
sure.
Because in an earlier visit, you mentioned that God failed, and that really grabbed my attention
Well,
because he is all powerful. He can do anything.
yes,
But he chooses to give us a choice.
yes, absolutely.
And that's where they didn't go in because they chose not to trust God and obey
Yes,
God.
yes,
But I guess but is not what I want to say next. We as leaders in our organizations, I think it's very important that we understand that the people we're leading have a choice.
yes,
They can
exactly,
they can adopt a new mindset, they can move forward toward helpful change or not.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, I agree 100%. So maybe to say God failed is not an accurate statement because eventually his timing is his own kind of thing, and eventually it got there. But the people have to want it. It's a choice, and that's one of the things that's striking also when Moses repeats to Israel, that if you don't obey God's commandments, guess what? There will be consequences, So it's not that God failed. It's just that it did a whole bunch of things, and yet people. What I guess the message is that it's difficult to change people's attitudes, people's minds, from people's mindset. That's a challenge, and if it's a challenge for God, then it's a challenge for the rest of us.
And I want to make very clear that I'm not, shall I say, taking exception to it really helped me think through from a different point of view
Mm,
that you would say that God failed, and you and I both know that he never fails. But
no,
from a certain standpoint, you could see it that way, and there's a lesson for us. And thank you.
yeah, yeah, it's a challenge. So then I was thinking about different people, and there were a couple of other guys that I admired. One was the former chairman of Intel, Andy Grove. And he had a quote that I love, and I keep on using it. It says, "Only the paranoid survive." And that's a mouthful in the sense that because paranoid means that you're somewhat, neurotic kind of thing about, you're looking over your shoulder all the time and whatever. But the point is it's true. You've got to, things change. And unless you're aware of what's happening, or things ought to change because they're not the way they should be. And if you don't, you like the people in the desert, 40 years, they didn't survive. They weren't paranoid enough. Um, or their source of fear was not, shouldn't have been about the people in the land, but not knowing what God was saying. Hey, I prepare the place for you, go, and they say, no, no, thanks, I don't want it. Give me a break. Anyway, that was one thing.
Well,
The other
and
quote that I said,
paranoia, excuse me,
yes,
paranoia is by some considered not mentally healthy,
yes,
but I understand Andy Grove, and I think I appreciate the lesson, and there's a joke that goes with it.
yeah.
My dad used to say, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean everyone isn't out to get you.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I tell students or people in general is don't believe that people want you to succeed, you know, because if you're in an organization, guess what? For one reason or another, people don't want you to succeed because they think they're taking it away from them.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's one thing. The other quote, what I thought of related to that whole aspect of that is Ono, the guy that helped create the culture in Toyota. And in one of his quotes is, if no problem, it's a problem. In other words, there's always opportunities. There's always the need for change. There's always ways to address. And if you say that we're okay, then it's a problem. And the reason I mentioned those things is that the challenge in some organizations, somebody may listen to us and say, well, my organization is fine, everything is okay. And that's the biggest challenge when a place is somewhat successful, to be complacent in writing whatever is happening right now. And it's a hard lesson to learn. And the best way to illustrate that is if you looked at all the companies that existed in the 1950s.
Hmm.
And to the 50s to people today is a long time ago, but I remember the 50s, so I use that. And you look at your search for them today, and you say, where are they? You know, people that were pillar of American industry, like RCA as an example. They had big building in New York City for the headquarters and stuff like that. It's now it's kind of an off-brand from a place in China kind of thing.
It is.
Uh, Another example is Sears. You know,
Yeah.
Sears used to be a pillar of uh, uh, consumer sales.
The powerhouse.
Yeah,
They occupied a place in our minds and hearts is now occupied by Amazon, I would
yes,
say, from my
exactly,
perspective.
exactly.
Look it up in the Sears and Roebuck catalog.
Yeah. So, and you can go through a whole bunch of kind of companies like that are. So the point is the brutal fact is that if the leaders don't face the need to innovate, to improve, to reduce waste, guess what? It's it's not a healthy situation. Yeah, it's maybe comfortable, but how long will that last? Okay. And all you have to do is to look, say, for instance, at General Motors. General Motors at one time had 60% market share in the marketplace. Now it's down to 15%. What happened? You know, that kind of stuff. Anyway, and then I look at cell phones. Cell phones is another industry that I love to look at because it's been a change not only in the leaders, but in the countries that were essentially initiating the innovation. Like, for instance, the innovator, the creator of the concept was Motorola. Yeah, Motorola is still making phones, but guess what? They're not it kind of thing. You know, it's an Apple that you want an iPhone. You know? Then after that was in 1984. I was looking at some stuff. The price was $4,000 then, which is a small fortune, and it weighed 4 pounds. Can you see yourself going around with a 4 pound telephone, you know? And all that it did is a phone, and even accessibility was not necessarily universal, you know, it
No.
was very limited, the kind of thing.
I once
And,
was in a meeting where a physician came in and set her briefcase down, and that was her cell phone. It was a
okay,
briefcase size. Lots of changes since then.
yeah. Then there was BlackBerry. BlackBerry, I remember because at the time I was taking students to China, and what was nifty with BlackBerry is that you would have access to make phone calls back home, which was not possible with other cell phones. Uh, so anyway, that was in 1999, and now BlackBerry is not the cat's whisker kind of thing. You know, it's a has-been kind of thing.
Hmm.
Then there was Nokia, and Nokia was, you know, Northern European countries, and in 2000, and now it's either iPhone, Samsung, or somebody like that, you know. There's a Chinese manufacturer, a Chinese brand, I can't think of it, the name now. Anyway, so the point is that all of those things illustrate the need for change and for the leadership to create a mindset that says, you know, if we're successful today, yeah, it's great, but guess what? We've got to figure out a better mousetrap. We've got to figure out how do we go from here? Because if we don't, somebody else will and eat our lunch. So that's what it comes down to. So when I look at the Exodus, I look at it in that way, in the sense of what were the tools that were being used, like the plagues, 10 plagues. Why so many? You know, he could have zapped the Pharaoh right from the start. But the point was, is not just the Pharaoh, is to change the mindset, from who's the true God? All those other things? Or is there one God kind of thing? And in some ways, the people, when they ask Moses, what's his name? Just if you look at it in terms of the plethora of gods that Egypt had at the time, you can understand who say, well, okay, which one is it? You know, tell us. You know, so obviously there was, you know, a culture that accepted all kinds of things that weren't what they should be. Uh, the other thing, it was the Passover, and the way that that became the start of the new year. So in other words, we're turning a page. We're moving away from the past, and this is the new you kind of thing. And you start moving. Then there were all I don't know what you call it, mini miracles or miracles anyway, the water, the manna, the quails, all of that. So all that happened within the span of a month. That the Ten Commandments that was in June supposedly, uh, and that was dramatically different from everything else that they were used to. So you see those things, and then when you look at Ten Commandments, there were two things that probably striking. One of them was it was written in stone, which was not the easiest thing to do. Okay, to carve it, to chisel the stones like that. And the other thing is the the permanence of those things. It's not like a manuscript or that deteriorates over time. It's meant to last. So you can look at every one of those things, and then you can see how quickly people drift away from that. And that's when the people ask for the golden calf while Moses is away. And Moses' brother says, "Oh, you want one? Okay." And my reaction is, "Where are you, leader?" Because it's easier to, if you're the leader, to acquiesce to the desire of the people instead of confronting the issue and say, "No, that's no good." In some ways, you see that today in the politics of the country is that we have a horrendous debt. And I'm thinking of Seattle and the mayor. They've got or the school they have a $70 million deficit, and there's a reluctance to confront the issue. So what's the answer? Well, we'll tax more people, kind of thing. So and then the mayor wants to give free lunches to every kid in school when they have a deficit. Where are you going to find the money? Well, we'll tax people, we'll raise the money somewhere. So you can see how it is too easy for the leadership to lose direction unless they have firm anchoring in the fundamentals that make them what they are. And that's the thing that we see with being in the desert. Hopefully, that was going to change the mindset of those people in a period of what I assume that I think it's a bit less than 2 years, the first phase of the Exodus. And and even then, they arrive in Kadesh, and guess what? They sent spies to explore the land and say, no, no, thanks, so we won't go, kind of thing. So you have all of those things. So in the process, you have laws. That was the Ten Commandments and other kinds of ancillary kind of laws that they had to fulfill. They had institutions or built institutions. They had priests. Okay, I'm sure there were priests also in Egypt, but guess what? Those guys were different. They had rituals, like for instance remembering the Passover, and other things. So you have to have celebrations, and you've got ways of doing things that are unique, that make you who you are, kind of thing. Um, and Numbers, it describes the camp, and when you have so many thousands of people, how do you move that mass? And what struck me is that there was a clear sense of identity. Each family had a very specific location that was assigned to them, and standards, flags that would identify who they were. So it's not just a mass of people, 2 million people just milling around, kind of thing, but very specific kinds of clusters that maintain that sense of identity of who we are. Uh, and there was a process of, making decisions when there was some conflict and who's going to decide what's what kind of thing. So first it was Moses doing it, and then his father-in-law saying, hey, what you're doing is no good, so delegate, train some people and delegate them. And if there are some tough cases, then have them come to you kind of thing. So they set up a process so that it's not, just tumbling along like a weed kind of thing.
I
Uh,
hope this is a good place for a stopping point because I'm
okay.
hoping that we can continue another visit. I know there's more, but we're out of time. Do you have a final comment or summation you'd like to make?
Well, the point is that you have to have all of those building blocks in place. Uh, I don't agree with some of the things that are going socially in the US, but the thing that you see, say, for instance, with Black Lives Matter, okay? What did they do? They have a flag, okay? So to create a sense of identity is the key thing. Yeah, they know they're black because they're black, but that's not sufficient. You've got to create something that separates you as compared to being part of. You have the Black National Anthem, and my reaction is, "You got to be kidding me!" What's that kind of thing? Not because I'm white and they're black, but because it's like, how can you have a country with two national anthems? It doesn't make any sense. So it creates division, and if you have division, guess what? You're less successful.
It weakens.
So the whole of those kinds of things, you see the same building blocks being used in the cases that I just mentioned that are to essentially undermine the existing situation.
Hmm.
Uh, anyway, so the point is that Exodus is more just an exercise of taking people out of Egypt to take them to the promised land. It's a process to create the culture. It's elements that you need to have in place to develop the mindset. And even with all those things, and even given the time and all the miracles that are going around, guess what? People will kick in the cart. It will not be a smooth ride. And with that, I'm going to stop.
Thank you. Look forward to more. Have a great day.